On my rides on these roads, I often see a lot of roadkill, a lot of small animals that are getting killed, and some of them have their body parts like spread, like their intestines, their eyeballs, just parts showing because they get run over by cars, trucks. And I also see some deer getting killed. I don't see the actual incident of a deer getting killed right at that moment, but I see them on the side of the roads where they lay there and they start to rot. And sometimes I can smell these dead animals before I even see them. And I hate that rotting smell, that rotting flesh. And one time I saw this deer that was rotting on the side of the road, and there were so many maggots like crawling all over the body, all over the deer's body, that I almost threw up a little bit. The smell was unbearable, and I couldn't help but look at the grotesque deer's mutilated, it's not mutilated, but it's rotting, and the flesh is being devoured by these maggots. It was just really gross. And I live in an area where there's a lot of deer, and so much so that in an area at Duke Forest in Durham, North Carolina. Well, actually, Duke Forest is also part of Chapel Hill. So the area where I saw a sign in Chapel Hill, where the entrance is to Duke Forest, there was a sign that stated that there are some hunters hunting deer to help curb the population, the high numbers of deer roaming around. And they had closed off the Duke Forest from public access for the days of Monday through Friday, I think. And I think it's open on the weekends rather. It's open on the weekends, but the sign is still up, and I should run by it or ride by it on my way to work. So I'll try to record that when I get there. And earlier I was talking about my Cannondale, and I was showing how This particular frame is built in Taiwan now. The CAD-9 was the last of the CAD series of frames that were built here in the US. And I've read in forums that the welds on these frames that are built in Taiwan aren't as clean or aren't as good as the ones that are made in Taiwan, but I'd like to argue the opposite. And from the frame that I own, the welds look really clean, and they're actually smooth, and you can see that the welders took some time and some care into placing their welds. It's not completely smooth, but you can see that it is smoother than what the welds are on my on my 2009 Gary Fisher, as an example. And the only thing that I'm bothered is one thing that I'm bothered about is that there's a slight, very small dimple on the top tube. I think it's not the fault of the manufacturers in Taiwan. I think the very small dimple on the top tube showed up more than likely due to being clamped on to a bike stand, bike repair stand, and the tubing on these CAD-10s are really thin, and if you're not careful, you can easily put in some dents and little dimples and some gouges and whatnot. You know, it's barely visible. I'll try to show it to you once I get to this stoplight. But you can barely see it. I don't know if the camera will even pick it up. But I thought I had purchased a perfectly straight and damage-free frame, but I'll try to show you. And somewhere here, right in front, is There's a very small dimple, like I said earlier, and you can barely see it. If I didn't point it out, more than likely any person that was looking at my bike wouldn't even notice it. You know, it really isn't a big deal. It doesn't affect the integrity or the function of the frame itself. I mean, the dimple is really small, and it probably didn't even show in the camera because that's how small it is. But the reason I noticed it at all was that I was sitting in my room and the sunlight seeping through the windows had this lighting on the frame, and it showed a straight line on the top tube, but then there was a slight curve, and upon closer inspection, that slight curve on the straight line from the sun identified the very small dimple on the frame. And you know, it bothered me a little at first, and it's been maybe 2 days since, and you know, I'm just gonna have to deal with it. And you know, it's so small that you don't even notice it unless you're sitting at the right angle and looking at the frame with the perfect lighting. And so, even though it's a brand new bike with less than 70 miles on it, everything is perfect except for that very small indentation. I can't help but repeating that over and over because there's just things like that that bother me. And if it was somebody else, I'm sure it wouldn't bother them quite as much. But for me, I kind of tend to like to have my belongings to be in perfect shape. That's one of the downfalls of ordering online. You can't inspect the item itself before you make the purchase. But again, it's just a small indentation that you won't even see it unless you're sitting at the right angle with the right lighting. I think I repeated myself enough.